Getting divorced? Absolutely not. Don't ever bring this up again, Dad. Why? Because he's disabled? I've endured this for 5 years. I'm done putting up with it. A sharp slap echoed through the room. Wendy was struck and fell onto the couch. I rushed over to help her, but she pushed my hand away and glared at me fiercely. Don't act so kind. You were the one who should have married Charles in the first place. Why am I the one suffering like this? Wendy is my stepsister. 10 years ago, after my mother passed away, my father married a widow from the military compound. That woman brought along a daughter, Wendy. Time passed, and both Wendy and I reached the age to get engaged. My father and Colonel Johnson were old comrades in arms and had once talked about becoming in-laws. Originally, I was supposed to be engaged to his son, Charles Johnson. But somehow, rumors began spreading that Wendy and Charles had fallen in love on their own. Suddenly, I became the outsider, as if I were the third wheel in their story. At that time, I was already worn out from dealing with my cousin's family. In the end, I was forced to take my cousin's place and go to the countryside for re-education. I was sent to a remote farm in the north, where I met another set-down youth named William. He later became my husband. I later heard that on the day Charles and Wendy got married, he was called out on a sudden military mission, got injured, and became paralyzed. When Wendy found out that his legs would never recover, she started demanding a divorce. But my father stopped her. He believed that divorce was shameful and would damage the family's reputation. No one expected that 5 years later, she would still be trying to leave him. Why are you saying I should have married Charles? I asked softly, my tone calm but full of confusion. Weren't you the one who fell in love with him? Shut up, Emily. Wendy snapped, her voice rising. Don't pretend to be innocent. Weren't you the one who brought everyone here on purpose today? I gave a faint, bitter smile. Still the same as when you were a kid, always so hateful. Sometimes I really wish you'd just die. Her eyes turned cold and sharp, cutting into me like knives. I could only smile helplessly. She'd been caught having an affair with my cousin but still tried to pin the blame on me. Honestly, I didn't mind seeing her scandal exposed. But it truly had nothing to do with me. William and I had gone to the provincial capital together, and after years apart, my father and stepmother came to pick us up. We happened to walk in on all of this. It was purely a coincidence. Back then, she and my cousins schemed to get me sent to the countryside so they could stay behind and enjoy their lives in comfort. Now that her affair has been exposed, doesn't that conveniently help her get the divorce she's been desperate for? In a way, I've done her a favor. She should be thanking me. Enough, my father shouted. Your shameless behavior has nothing to do with your sister. You are the one who begged to marry Charles, and now you cheat and demand a divorce? If this gets out, how am I supposed to face our neighbors and friends? You've completely disgraced this family. My stepmother quickly tried to calm him down. At least it's just us. There are no outsiders. If we don't talk about it, no one will find out. Auntie's right, Dad, I said gently, smiling to ease his anger. It's a family matter. Let's not bring it up anymore. William's getting another promotion soon. That's something to celebrate. We still have to visit his old commander later, so we shouldn't stay long. I turned and exchanged a smile with William. That simple look between us seemed to set Wendy off again. Her eyes turned red, filled with bitterness and unwillingness. When we stepped out of the house and passed the corner of the alley, I heard someone calling my name behind me. It was Wendy's voice, frantic, almost deranged, and terrifying in its intensity. I turned around, and the next thing I heard was the sharp crack of a gunshot. A burst of blood exploded from my chest. In the distance, Wendy threw back her head and laughed hysterically. Let's see who's better now, you or me, you and me. Let's see who wins. She sounded completely insane. Beside me, William's face went pale with shock. I tried to reach for him, but no matter how hard I stretched, I couldn't touch him. My body hit the ground heavily, the world spinning as my vision blurred. My consciousness began to fade. For a moment, it felt like even time itself had stopped. When I opened my eyes again, I was back, 6 years earlier, in the military housing compound. The first thing I heard was someone gossiping. That slut from the Wen family went down to the countryside. No one could stop her. She fought with her family and ran off. I gave a small laugh. So Wendy had gone down to the countryside. She'd rather go starve out there than live a comfortable life here. I rubbed my chest absent-mindedly. Maybe it was just a phantom pain, a lingering trauma from what she did to me, but every now and then my chest would ache faintly, reminding me of how Wendy had killed me. Because of the national situation, schools had been shut down, and I couldn't attend classes. Thankfully, I'd kept my old textbooks. In my previous life, after the college entrance exams were reinstated, William had been admitted to a university. I worked myself half to death doing business to support him. And yet, once he got there, this time I decided I would take the college exam too. If he could pass, why couldn't I? I wasn't impatient by nature, but the textbooks were dull, and there were many things I didn't understand. Before long, my eyes started to ache. Outside the window, the walnut tree was lush and green, and the breeze swayed the open window gently. With that soft wind brushing my face, I felt myself drifting into sleep. Not long after, I felt a tickle on the tip of my nose, as if something brushed against it. I opened my eyes. Standing by the window was Charles Johnson, dressed in an old green casual uniform. He leaned lazily against the window frame, holding a sprig of foxtail grass in his hand, and using its tip to tease my nose. His playful smile hadn't yet faded. "Well, look at that," I muttered. "Caught you red-handed." The young man in front of me, or rather, not so young anymore, had the calm maturity of someone far older. Though he was only 2 years older than me, he looked and acted as if he were 7 or 8 years my senior. He always carried himself with quiet steadiness. We had grown up together in the same military compound, though after he joined the army, I hadn't seen him again. In my previous life, I hadn't returned from the countryside until 5 years later. Counting it all, it had probably been 8 or 9 years since I'd last seen him. Now, seeing him again, the first thing he said was, "I heard your sister went down to the countryside." I was still groggy from sleep and not in the mood to talk, so I grumbled a faint turned over and buried my face back into the pillow. "You only have girls in your family," he went on, tossing away the foxtail grass and giving my shoulder a light push. "How did she end up being the one sent down? Did your dad not like her or something?" He really didn't know when to stop. I cracked one eye open and glared at him. "You're overthinking it. If you like her so much, why don't you go chase after her? Why bother me?" "I was just asking. I don't like her," he said lazily, his tone unbothered, carrying a hint of sleepiness. Then he glanced at the desk, noticed the open book under my arm, and pulled it out, a math textbook. He flipped through it casually. "Since when did you start studying again?" "Why do you care?" I shot back. "Is it a crime to want to study?" After all his teasing, any trace of drowsiness I'd had was completely gone. All right, Miss Emily," Charles said with a teasing grin, raising his hands in mock surrender. "Whatever you say. But seriously, what's up with you today? You seem different, kind of irritable, actually." "What's different about me?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. He studied me for a moment. "You used to be gentle, you know? Soft-spoken. You'd get scared if someone so much as raised their voice around you. But just now, you were like a tiger ready to pounce." The truth was, I had never been timid. That so-called gentleness had always been an act, a mask I wore for others. Without a mother to protect me, how could I have grown up without learning how to defend myself? After everything I'd been through, my personality had changed. Maybe it was because I'd lived too much, seen too much. Now, I just wanted to be my true self. Was that really such a bad thing? I looked at Charles and smiled. He froze for a second, then smiled back. "Good," he said softly. Not much had changed about him from my previous life. Charles was going to get engaged soon. But this time, the bride-to-be wasn't Wendy, it was me. In the work team where Wendy had been sent, there was a girl I knew well, Sarah, a childhood friend who'd grown up with me. Just a few days ago, she wrote me a letter and mentioned Wendy. She said Wendy had gotten very close to one of the other sent-down youths and took extra care of him. The two of them seemed rather affectionate, like dry wood meeting fire. Wendy even started taking on double shifts, all so that William could have more time to study. Sarah also wrote that rumors were spreading among the sent-down youths that the college entrance exams would soon be reinstated. She encouraged me to start studying again, just in case it turned out to be true. I wrote back, telling her the news was very likely real and that she should take it seriously and start preparing too. From the moment Wendy decided to volunteer to go to the countryside, I knew exactly what she was planning. In my previous life, William's future had flourished because of my help, and now she wanted to take my place, to enjoy the fruits of my labor. She was jealous of what I had built, but as the saying goes, you reap what you sow. You plant beans, you get beans. You plant flowers, you get flowers. She didn't even stop to think about who had tilled that soil in the first place. She only saw the harvest. I was curious to see what kind of mess she'd make for herself this time. In the past 2 days, my father mentioned that the Johnson family wanted to arrange an engagement between Charles and me. I refused. In my last life, there had been no real fate between us, and there was no reason to force it in this one. Thinking about how Charles had been paralyzed in my past life, left frustrated and hopeless, I felt a pang of sympathy. He'd been my childhood friend, after all. If I could somehow prevent that tragedy from happening again, that would be a good thing. But how? How could I stop it? Charles had been called away suddenly on a mission on the very day of his wedding to Wendy. That was 2 months from now. My father, despite his 20-some years in the military, was selfish to the core. He never thought of anyone but himself. He didn't love anyone, not even me, his own daughter. When I refused the engagement, he wouldn't accept it. And now, he'd locked me in the house for 3 days straight. It was pure tyranny. Thinking about it, it wasn't surprising. In my last life, Wendy had made a scene about divorce for 5 years, and my father never backed down. To him, I was the most obedient one. So how could I possibly fight back? When Charles heard I was being forced into an engagement, he came to see me. "You don't have to be afraid," he told me. "I've already talked to Uncle Robert. The engagement won't be brought up again. We're still the same as before. In a few days, I have to go on a trip. You should just marry someone you really like. Don't worry about what your father wants." "A trip?" I asked quickly. "Where to? Is it over in the Western District?" He frowned slightly. "Don't talk nonsense. That's classified information." There was a brief silence between us, awkward and heavy. Then he added, "Don't worry, it's just a small operation, nothing dangerous." But his words only made my chest tighten. In my previous life, there had been no romantic relationship between Charles and me. But we had grown up together, and that bond meant something. No matter what, I couldn't just sit by and watch Charles end up the way he had in my previous life. After he left, I couldn't stop thinking about how to keep him from going. Once an order was issued, it couldn't be changed overnight. What could I possibly do to stop it? I never expected things to move so quickly. The very next day, Charles was sent out on his mission, while I was still locked inside the house. My father was determined to fight me to the bitter end. After thinking it over, I made up my mind. I would agree to the engagement. My plan was simple: get Charles to come back first, and once the danger had passed, I'd find a way to break it off. It was a foolish plan, but at that point, it was my only option. I needed outside help, and this was the only way to get it. When my father heard that I'd changed my mind, he was visibly excited. I already knew he'd been dealing with some shifts in his position lately, and he was eager to use his connection with Colonel Johnson to help himself. For him, this was perfect. He could strengthen his ties, and I could use the engagement as an excuse to bring Charles back. My father personally called Colonel Johnson and invited him over to discuss the engagement. Colonel Johnson had watched me grow up, and since I'd always acted gentle and well-behaved, he'd been quite fond of me. When he arrived, he and my father exchanged a few polite words before getting straight to the main topic. Colonel Johnson was all smiles. Feigning a little shyness, I asked softly, "Uncle Johnson, since we're going to be engaged, when will Charles come back? Could he come home now, maybe just for a while?" The look on his face told me he saw right through me. He turned to my father and laughed. "Robert, see? I told you. Your daughter Emily must really like Charles. You can tell from the way she talks about him. Her feelings are written all over her face." I blinked in confusion. What feelings? Was my acting really that convincing? "The engagement will have to wait until Charles returns," he said kindly. "Orders are orders. You can't just change military commands on a whim. And Emily, dear, you mustn't be impatient. Engagements are a big deal. They take time to prepare, don't they? My father quickly chimed in, agreeing with everything Colonel Johnson said. From their exchange, it became clear that even agreeing to the engagement wouldn't be enough to bring Charles back. I took a deep breath and decided to play along. "Uncle Johnson," I said, lowering my voice, "I've liked Charles since I was a little girl. You know that. I always used to follow him everywhere. But lately, I don't know what's wrong with me. Every night, I've been having nightmares about him. I see him lying in some mountain ravine, covered in blood. I wake up terrified, over and over again. I can't help it. I'm really worried about him. I know missions are important, and I'm not asking for him to come back. But could you at least find out how dangerous this one is? Please, Uncle Johnson, could you ask someone for me?" The words tumbled out of me in one breath, rapid and desperate, like bullets from a machine gun. Colonel Johnson looked conflicted. "Emily, it's not that I don't worry about him," he said carefully. "But I can't break protocol just because of a few dreams. Don't let your imagination run wild." Before I could reply, my father's tone hardened. "You're not even married yet, and already you're making a fuss like this? Enough. Don't embarrass yourself." His face still wore a smile, but his eyes flashed with warning. I ignored him completely. "Uncle Johnson, it's not about breaking rules. It's just about checking the situation, sending a little support, maybe, or even just a phone call to see how things are going. Please, I'm begging you." Perhaps it was my persistence, or maybe he simply couldn't bear to refuse me any longer. With a small, helpless smile, Colonel Johnson nodded. All right, Emily, I'll do as you ask." He picked up the phone. "This is Colonel Charles Johnson of the 7th Regiment. Connect me to Chief Chen's office, please." A pause. Then the line clicked, and a voice on the other end said, "Right away, sir, transferring your call now." At first, everything on the phone seemed normal. Then, through the static, I vaguely caught a few words. "Escaped into the mountains." As soon as I heard that, I saw the color drain from Colonel Johnson's face. I knew immediately that something had gone wrong. After hanging up, he left in a hurry. I told myself he would take care of it, that he'd find a way to handle whatever was happening. But 2 days later, the news came. Charles was injured. The cup in my hand slipped and shattered on the floor. My heart froze. How could this happen again? He was still hurt. He still couldn't escape his fate. I asked Colonel Johnson for the address of the hospital where Charles was being treated and decided I had to go see him. The green train was packed with people shoulder to shoulder. My father had pulled some strings to get me a sleeper ticket. Before I left, he scolded me for not consulting him first. Not out of concern for his daughter, of course. He just wanted to make sure this visit would benefit him somehow. In his mind, my trip was simply a gesture that would strengthen the relationship between our families, nothing more. The city of Chengdu was quite far from Guizhou. The train ride would take 2 full days. My back and waist ached from lying down too long, and I had to keep an eye on my belongings so nothing got stolen. The train rolled through endless plains, fields of golden wheat stretching as far as the eye could see, dotted with small, scattered villages. Then we entered the mountain region. Lush green peaks rising and falling endlessly, the scenery so vast and alive it almost cleared the heaviness in my heart. During a stop, a middle-aged woman and her son boarded and sat on the lower bunk across from me. They must have only bought 1 sleeper ticket. Seeing me quietly gazing out the window, the woman struck up a conversation. "Girl, you're not from Sichuan or Chongqing, are you?" she asked in a warm, nosy tone. "You keep staring out the window. First time traveling far from home?" I smiled politely. "No, ma'am. I'm from Guizhou, traveling back home with my brother. He's in another car." My voice was naturally soft, and I intentionally made it even gentler, more delicate. She clucked approvingly. "I thought so. Such a pretty girl. Your family must be worried sick letting you travel alone." I smiled again but didn't answer. That didn't stop her. "How old are you, dear? 18? I glanced briefly at the man sitting beside her, who had been staring at me a little too intently. The moment our eyes met, he quickly turned away, pretending to look elsewhere. "Oh, ma'am, you're too kind," I said lightly. "I'm 35. The woman's eyes widened in disbelief. "Heavens! You're joking, right? You can't really be 35. "Sure am," I said with a grin. "Already have 3 kids." The woman exchanged a quick look with her son, then chuckled, waving her hand. These young people nowadays. You eat well, dress well, no wonder you don't age. Look at my son, he's 28, but doesn't he look barely over 20? And he's already a team leader too. Such a good man, knows how to treat his wife right. Not like my husband, useless drunk, always in debt, always hitting people. I widened my eyes in feigned shock. Oh my, that's awful. How can he hit you? The woman puffed up proudly. But my son's different. He earns a good salary every month. Whoever marries him will have a good life. So she was either showing off or trying to set me up. Either way, I had no interest in continuing. Just then, the man on the upper bunk grumbled, "Can you two keep it down? Some of us are trying to sleep." His irritated tone startled the woman and she finally fell silent. The scenery outside the window slid by again as the whistle sounded in the distance. Soon, the train arrived at Guizhou Station. I grabbed my luggage and followed the crowd toward the exit. I was walking fast, but I noticed the mother and son following closely behind me. I wasn't sure if it was just coincidence or something else. Outside the station, a green military jeep was waiting. I quickened my pace toward it. A young man in uniform stood beside the vehicle, holding up a sign with my name on it. We greeted each other politely. His name was Victor Wei, a transport driver in the army. Whenever soldiers' families came to visit or supplies needed to be picked up, he was usually the one assigned to go out. When I turned to check on that mother and son who'd been following me earlier, I saw them walking off in the opposite direction. I frowned slightly in relief. Thankfully, someone from the military had come to pick me up. It must have scared them off. Otherwise, I wasn't sure how I would have gotten rid of them. Victor was young, his skin tanned dark from the sun. We got into the jeep, but he didn't start the engine. I asked, "Aren't we leaving?" He turned around from the driver's seat with a friendly smile. "In a moment, ma'am. We're waiting for one more person." I blinked, surprised. One more? I didn't hear about anyone else coming. Just then, the door opened, and another man climbed in. When I looked up, I realized it was the same man who'd been sitting on the upper bunk above me on the train. I couldn't help shaking my head, so it had all been arranged from the start. I'd been worrying for nothing about that mother and son. The man didn't even glance at the icy look I gave him. Victor greeted him cheerfully, but the man only nodded faintly and said nothing more. The jeep started moving, the road at first smooth, then gradually turning rough and uneven. The jolts grew stronger until my stomach lurched, threatening to rebel. I gripped the side handle tightly, forcing myself to endure it. After about 2 hours, the scenery outside changed. The endless rice paddies gave way to dense greenery, tall trees flanking both sides of the narrow road. Their thick branches stretched wide, filtering sunlight into a shifting pattern of gold and shadow, the air full of dust that glittered in the beams. Finally, the jeep came to a stop. In front of us stood rows of tents and makeshift wooden structures, a temporary camp. Victor and the other man led me forward. "Don't worry, ma'am," Victor said kindly. "This is our temporary base. Captain Charles is resting in that tent right up there." He pointed to a tent ahead. He called me ma'am again. I sighed inwardly. There was no way to explain, so I just let it go. Clearly, he'd misunderstood our relationship. Just as we reached the tent, I heard laughter coming from inside. "You've wiped your face twice already. What, you gonna polish it next?" A deep, teasing voice joked. Another voice joined in, chuckling. "He's just nervous. The guest isn't even here yet, and look at him, all worked up." My steps faltered. For a moment, I wasn't sure if I should go in. It felt awkward to interrupt whatever was happening, but Victor, apparently oblivious, called out loudly, "Report!" The laughter inside stopped abruptly. "Come in," someone said. Victor grinned at me. "Go ahead, ma'am." I hesitated, my heart suddenly racing. Before I could gather myself, Victor gave me a gentle push, and I stumbled into the tent. Charles was lying on a cot, his upper body propped up against a pillow. Beside him sat 2 middle-aged men, clearly his superiors. "So this is Comrade Emily?" one of them said with a broad smile. "We've been waiting for you. You're even lovelier in person." The two exchanged knowing glances, their grins wide as they greeted me with exaggerated warmth. They were flirting right in front of him. Did they not realize how awkward this was for me? Thankfully, Charles quickly stepped in. Sir, with your permission, he said firmly, I'd like to speak with Comrade Emily privately. Of course, one of them laughed as they got up. On his way out, he shot us a look that said everything. See? Young people just can't wait. Before leaving, he even added jokingly, don't forget to file that marriage application soon. Charles's face flushed red. I could only stare. This definitely wasn't going the way I had planned. Wasn't he supposed to be in love with Wendy? This could be a problem. The air between us grew quiet. I slowly walked up to Charles's bedside. A white blanket was draped over him. There were bruises on his face, the swelling making his usually honest-looking features seem even more foolish. Before, his face had carried a trace of youthful sharpness. Now he just looked, well, clumsy. Leaning forward, I carefully lifted the blanket. His legs were bare, unmarked, no visible injuries. A wave of relief washed over me. So his legs weren't damaged this time. He wouldn't end up paralyzed like in my previous life. What are you doing? Charles's startled voice snapped beside my ear. I froze, realizing what I'd just done was completely inappropriate. He sat up a little too quickly, trying to pull the blanket back over his legs and completely forgetting the wound on his upper body. The sudden movement made him wince, one hand clutching his chest as his face flushed red. Whether from pain or embarrassment, I couldn't tell. I hurriedly lowered the blanket again and supported his shoulders so he could lean back slowly. The wound on his chest was still seeping faintly through the bandages. I was about to fetch a medic when I felt a sudden warmth against my palm. I looked down. His large, calloused hand had closed over mine. His grip was rough, the skin dry and textured, but the warmth of it spread through me in an unsettling way. My heart twisted, not with affection, but something far more complicated. I was certain I didn't love Charles. Maybe when we were younger, he had been a small source of comfort in my lonely childhood. But after everything I'd lived through, time had long worn down any illusions I once had about love. I had always been cold-hearted, detached. I'd never truly loved anyone, not even my parents. Even William, whom I'd known for 5 years, had never stirred real affection in me. He was selfish, always thinking of himself. Charles was different, sincere, loyal, too full of feeling for his own good. If he ever truly fell for me, it would only bring him pain. Because I couldn't give anything back. I didn't think I even had the ability to love anyone. Gently, I removed his hand from mine and forced a small smile. I haven't had a chance to explain yet. I was afraid you might misunderstand. I didn't agree to the engagement because I wanted to marry you. I only needed an identity so I could come see you. I was worried about you getting hurt. The faint smile on Charles's lips faded. That doesn't make sense, he said quietly. What? I blinked, caught off guard. I had expected disappointment, maybe hurt, but not that calm tone. You could have visited even without an engagement, he said matter-of-factly, tugging lightly at the edge of his blanket. And how would I do that? I asked, my voice rising a little. We grew up together, sure, but not just anyone can enter a military base. Only military family members can. Without that official connection, do you really think my father would have let me come? Just because I told him I had a dream about you being injured? I sighed. If you hadn't ignored orders, you wouldn't have gotten hurt in the first place. I poured him a glass of water and handed it over. Here, drink this. He accepted it but didn't take a sip. His thumb brushed along the rim of the cup as he asked softly, Then why are you worried about me at all? Because we grew up together, I answered simply. So did a lot of people, he said, looking up at me with a steady gaze. Take Leo Shu, for example, the boy who broke his arm when you two played together as kids, or Colin Lin, who's been bedridden for years because of his weak health. You grew up with them too. Why didn't you get engaged to one of them? He paused, his tone calm but pointed. Don't say it's because we're closer. We both know we barely even talked growing up. So what is it you're really trying to say, Emily? His words hit something in me. Shame, irritation, I couldn't tell. I felt my patience thinning. What am I trying to say? Nothing. There's no deep bond between us. Charles, I just didn't want you to die, that's all. Don't turn this into something it isn't. My voice came out sharper than I intended. Don't tell me a simple act of kindness means you get to bind me to you for life. I want us to give it a try, Charles said quietly. Maybe you'll end up liking me. Impossible, I thought immediately. I won't ever fall for anyone. I didn't reply. Gradually, I noticed the muscles in his face tighten, his expression turning tense. Maybe there was something cruel in my nature, because instead of feeling sympathy, I actually found it amusing. A part of me wanted to toy with him, just to see how far he'd go. Fine, I said at last, but you'll have to deal with whatever happens. You're the one choosing to get close to me. If you end up getting hurt, that's on you. He smiled, his whole face lighting up over a single sentence. Watching him look so happy over something so small almost made me laugh. Charles was later transferred to the Army Hospital in Chengdu. The doctor said he'd need about 2 months of recovery. I returned to Chengdu as well. Winter came quickly that year. One morning, our family received a letter from Wendy. She wrote that she had met someone she liked in the countryside, a fellow sent-down youth, and that the two of them had already gotten married. She said they'd be coming back soon. I couldn't help but feel a twisted sort of anticipation. I wanted to see her face when she eventually found out about William. He wasn't exactly a good man. Sure enough, a few days later, Wendy returned. I noticed she'd changed a lot, or maybe not. Maybe this arrogant, domineering version of her was who she had always been underneath the act. News of her marriage sent tension rippling through the household. My stepmother had been walking on eggshells lately, terrified of upsetting my father. He had originally planned to marry Wendy off to the son of a high-ranking official. No one expected that she'd go to the countryside and marry someone entirely on her own. It was snowing the day they arrived. My stepmother went to the train station to meet her daughter and new son-in-law. Hearing the commotion, I looked out the window. The two of them were walking arm in arm through the falling snow, laughing softly together, flakes gathering in their hair. For a moment, they looked almost picturesque, like one of those perfect couples destined to grow old side by side. I let out a small laugh. How ridiculous. As soon as they entered the house, Wendy's complaining voice echoed through the hallway. Why didn't Dad send a car for us? Doesn't he have one? We're soaked because of this. It's fine, William's voice came gently. It's already very kind of your mother to come meet us. She must care a lot. Care my ass, Wendy muttered under her breath. This is his way of putting us in our place. She brushed snow off William's shoulders as she spoke. Don't say that, he said softly. Your father's anger is understandable. We did get married without his consent. William looked at her tenderly while she fussed over him, his eyes full of affection. When they entered the living room, my father was sitting on the couch with a newspaper in his hands, pretending to read. He had been waiting for this confrontation. The moment they stepped inside, he slammed the cup in his hand to the floor. It shattered right at Wendy's feet. Wendy shrieked in fright, jumping back. My gentle stepmother, usually so timid, did something completely out of character. She rushed forward and shoved my father's arm aside. What do you think you're doing? She cried. If you're angry, take it out on me. I'm the one who married you. Wendy has always treated you like her real father. How could you do this to her? Wendy's eyes filled instantly with tears, her expression pure and pitiful, playing the innocent perfectly. Her act only seemed to awaken William's sense of protectiveness. He stepped forward, shielding her behind him, and bowed solemnly to my father. Sir, please allow me to call you Dad. Wendy and I truly love each other. I understand how much she means to you, and that's why you're upset. But please, believe me. I'll take good care of her, William said earnestly. My father's scowl eased, just barely, a fraction of a degree. Wendy quickly followed up, her tone sweet but strategic. Dad, this is William. You don't know him yet, but he's really talented. Everyone's talking about how the college entrance exams will be reinstated soon, and I know he'll definitely get into a university when the time comes. You'll have to help him out then, won't you? After all, he's your son-in-law now. My father's face darkened even further. I couldn't help letting out a short laugh, which immediately earned me a glare sharp enough to cut glass. Wendy smiled at me, unbothered. I heard you're getting engaged, Emily. Who's the lucky man? My stepmother answered before I could speak. You've met him. It's the younger son from Colonel Johnson's family. What? Wendy's eyes widened in shock. But I heard he got injured on a mission. His legs are paralyzed. If Emily marries him, wouldn't that make her a living widow? My stepmother clicked her tongue and sighed dramatically. Exactly. But our family values loyalty and integrity. If something happens to the groom's side, we can't just cancel the engagement. What would people say about us then, Old Robert? She turned to my father with a soft smile. Now that Wendy's marriage is settled, shouldn't you talk to the Johnsons about setting a date for Emily's engagement? Enough, my father snapped, waving her off. Emily's situation is my decision to make. You don't need to meddle. And besides, since when does the bride's family rush these things? I watched the scene unfold, disgust curling in my stomach. They had no idea that Charles wasn't injured at all. In fact, he'd just been awarded a second-class merit and promoted to captain. They thought he was a cripple, a burden, and couldn't wait to push me into what they saw as a pit, hoping I'd fall and never climb back out. And my father? He knew more than he let on, but instead of saying anything, he just sat back, calculating what benefits he might gain from the situation. "Dad," I said calmly, breaking the tense air, "Charles and I already talked about the engagement. We'll do it after my college entrance exams. That way, we can celebrate both at once." Every head in the room turned toward me in surprise. Even Wendy froze. "You?" She let out a small laugh. "You're taking the college exam? You haven't even touched a textbook in years. That's just wishful thinking. When you fail, you'll embarrass Dad completely." I met her sneer with a cool smile. "Even if I fail, Charles won't look down on me. But if your precious husband doesn't pass, people will just say Dad's daughter went to the countryside and ended up marrying a bumpkin. Now that's embarrassing." My words hit their mark, and Wendy's expression faltered. For once, she was speechless. The next few weeks passed quickly. The rumors about the college entrance exam being officially reinstated turned out to be true. But there was only 1 month left before the test. Everyone was scrambling to prepare. Wendy, meanwhile, couldn't seem to stay home. Every few days she'd come back to the house, asking her mother for money or taking rice and flour from the pantry. One day her sister-in-law wanted her to arrange a job. The next her mother-in-law was sick and needed treatment in Chengdu. It was one exhausting favor after another. I often overheard her complaining to my stepmother when she came home, her voice thick with frustration. I'd lived through this once before, so I knew exactly what it was like. But Wendy wasn't like me. She bent over backward trying to be the perfect wife, too afraid to stand up for herself. Didn't she realize? The more you tolerate, the more others will test how much you can take. Our bedrooms were separated by just one wall, and I could hear every word she said that night. She was crying to her mother again. "Ever since we got married, William hasn't even touched me. His mother calls me a useless hen that can't lay eggs." I couldn't stop the quiet laugh that slipped out. "Endure it, Wendy," I thought to myself. "You'll have plenty more of those insults coming." My stepmother's voice came next, sharp and impatient. "How can you not know how to hold on to your husband's heart? He used to be so good to you in the beginning." "Mom, William's been treating me pretty well lately," Wendy said softly. "It's just, I don't know what's wrong with him. He says. I could practically imagine the shy flush creeping up her face, her voice stammering like a nervous schoolgirl. "Oh, come on, Mom, don't pinch me. He says he likes me a lot, but he just can't, get it up." There was a long, awkward silence. My stepmother didn't say a word for several seconds, clearly mortified. Finally she muttered, "All right, I'll find some kind of remedy for him. Something traditional. You two can try it." I had to cover my mouth to stop myself from laughing. What a ridiculous excuse. William might fool those two fools, Wendy and her mother, but I knew better. The next day, 2 big cans of malted milk powder appeared on the living room table. As Wendy was about to leave, she looked at me and said sweetly, "Emily, you're timid, but not very clever. The college entrance exam is no joke. It's like 1,000 troops crossing a single plank bridge. Here, I bought you some malted milk powder. It'll help you stay strong." I smiled. "Thanks. You should give some to your mom, too. At her age, she probably needs it more than I do." Then I added casually, "By the way, Wendy, I heard you and William still haven't, consummated the marriage. Why's that?" Her face turned pale, then bright red. She glared at me, pure fury flashing in her eyes, as if she wanted to stab me on the spot. Without a word, she snatched up the 2 cans of malted milk powder and stormed out. Through the window, I saw her outside, stamping her foot in rage before hurling both cans straight into the trash bin. I sighed. Even if she hadn't thrown them away, I wouldn't have dared to drink that stuff. Who knew what a mad woman like her might have put in it? Time passed quickly, and the college entrance exam arrived. Since the test was announced so suddenly, none of us had much time to prepare. Luckily, the questions were relatively simple this year. When my admission notice finally arrived, I could breathe again. I'd been accepted to the Capital Normal College, an excellent school by any standard. William received his letter too. He'd been admitted to Capital University, one of the top institutions in the country. I couldn't deny it. When it came to studying, he had always been disciplined and ambitious. The very day the acceptance letters arrived, Wendy showed up at her mother's house to share her good news. She was only 3 months pregnant, but she walked like she was about to give birth any day. That's right, Wendy was pregnant. I couldn't help sighing. She really did know how to trap herself. William didn't even want to touch her, so why rush to have his child? Poor kid, I thought. It wasn't his fault his mother was so desperate. Just as I'd once said I wanted double happiness, the same wish came true for me. Charles and I got engaged without a hitch. After 4 months of recovery, he was almost completely healed. I could tell he was genuinely happy. He stood tall and proud, holding a glass of wine, toasting everyone with a bright, healthy flush on his face. Each time someone teased him, he'd blush and duck his head, the shy expression completely at odds with his rugged looks. I still remembered the look on Wendy's face when she first saw him. Utter shock. She was so startled she dropped her bowl, spilling food all over the table. Did she regret it then? I hope she did. Things thrown away deliberately should never be picked up again. Charles and I planned to get married after I graduated. My father, of course, wasn't satisfied. He thought that since we were already engaged, we should hurry up and hold the wedding. He said I was dragging things out for no reason. I ignored him. My life was mine to decide. I'd marry when I wanted to, not when it suited him. But lately, my stepmother had fallen ill, and my father had been too preoccupied with that to nag me. When I visited her at the hospital, I was stunned. In just a few days, she had changed completely. Her hair was falling out, her body swollen, her skin sallow and waxy. She looked like a different person entirely. She couldn't eat anything. Every bite she took came right back up. Thankfully, my father still had a shred of decency left in him, and arranged for a caretaker to look after her. Wendy, heavily pregnant, was still at home resting. As for me, I wasn't my stepmother's biological daughter, so the fact that I even came to see her once was already more than expected. But what truly shocked me was what the doctor said. My stepmother wasn't actually ill, she'd been poisoned. A toxic trace element had built up in her body, causing chronic poisoning. A little more, the doctor said, and she would have died. The entire house was turned upside down during the investigation. Finally, they found the source: a can of malted milk powder. Tests showed it contained a dangerously high level of the toxic substance. My father questioned my stepmother about where it came from, but she couldn't answer. The poisoning had inflamed her throat so badly that she couldn't speak. Even swallowing was agony, like knives scraping her throat. Since she couldn't talk, someone had to. I stepped forward. "Officer," I said steadily, "I believe that can of malted milk powder might be the same one Wendy gave me before." I explained everything. "Wendy gave me 2 cans a while back. I refused to take them and saw her throw them into the trash. I don't know how one ended up back in the house, but I'm certain they're the same ones." The police officer nodded, but remained cautious. "Miss Emily, what you're saying is still speculation. We can't confirm that the poisoned can and the one your sister gave you are the same without evidence, but we'll open a formal investigation to look into it thoroughly." My father's face was dark and grave, while my stepmother wept silently beside him, shaking her head as tears streamed down her face. When we finally found Wendy, she was at Capital University, in the middle of a screaming argument with William. "I gave up everything for you," she shouted, grabbing at his collar like a mad woman. "You said you needed time to study, so I sold my things to pay for your tuition. It was freezing, and I spent my own money to buy you firewood. When the rations weren't enough, I went hungry so you could eat. Since we got married, I've taken care of your sick mother, helped your sister find a job, even paid for most of her dowry. And this is how you repay me?" She was crying and yelling, spittle and tears flying as she clung to his shirt. "I want a divorce. I want a divorce." My father stepped forward and yanked her away, dragging her toward home. She struggled against him, screaming, while I followed slowly behind. To me, it all felt like watching a scene from a play, a tragic, inevitable comedy. On the street outside our house, my father slapped Wendy so hard she fell to the ground. "Divorce? Don't even think about it. There are no divorced women in the Wen family." Wendy stared up at us, eyes wide with disbelief. For a long moment she just sat there frozen, like her whole world had collapsed. "Why?" Her expression seemed to say. "Why does it feel like I'm reliving my past life all over again?" She had changed her path, hadn't she? She had married William instead. She should have become the wife of a government official by now. So why was Emily the one who succeeded, and not her? Then came the scandal that shocked the entire Capital University. According to the papers, a student named Wu William and another male student, Liang, had been roommates. The two were discovered to be in an intimate relationship. One afternoon, while most students were away for the weekend, Wendy visited the dorm unexpectedly and caught them together. The incident exploded. Both William and Liang were expelled for improper conduct. Wendy, devastated by the discovery, suffered a miscarriage and a severe mental breakdown. She was later committed to a psychiatric hospital. I stared at the newspaper in silence, remembering how, in my previous life after the reform years, my business had flourished. I'd earned plenty of money I had used to pave the way for William's success, pulling strings and building connections for him. He had been ambitious back then, always efficient, always careful to polish his reputation. Every task he handled had gone smoothly, earning him achievement after achievement. He had everything he wanted, because of me. Step by step, William kept climbing higher. At first, he was careful, secretive. But as his position rose and his influence grew, he stopped bothering to hide anything from me. I could no longer help him the way I used to, and when I eventually uncovered his affairs, he didn't even care. After all, if one of us fell, we'd both go down together. His mother despised me, thought I wasn't worthy of her son since I'd never gone to college. And we'd been married for 5 years without having a child. She never knew that William had never even touched me. I had planned to gather evidence and report his misconduct, but before I could do it, Wendy went mad, completely insane, and killed me. In this life, I graduated from college without a hitch and married Charles. On our wedding day, my father was beaming with pride, constantly urging me, "Now that you're married, hurry up and have a child." "I'm going abroad," I told him calmly. "I want to do something for myself." His smile vanished instantly. "You're being reckless," he snapped, scolding me for being restless and disobedient. "Restless?" I asked quietly. "Stepmother was always obedient, wasn't she? Then why did you bring that can of malted milk powder home and give it to her?" He froze. The blood drained from his face as he stared at me in disbelief. I smiled, baring my teeth. "Don't be afraid, she's already dead.